Hey there, Bookkeeping Side Hustle Community. So glad you're here. We've got a great webinar with Shahram Zarshenas from Financial Sense. It's going to be how to successfully run a remote firm. And forgive my background. There's no blur setting that I could find in StreamYard, but I lead a Bible study for kids on Thursday mornings and came straight here to this. So thank you, Shahram, for being here. Guys, this is our third in a series, and there's a playlist below. We're going to do 6 total interviews with him where he's just educating us on the best, most modern ways to run our firms. So check out our previous interview of how to scale your firm with optimized checklists and how to automate your accounting firm. And then in October, on October 13th at noon, we're going to hear how to build a high-performing firm. But today, it's all about how to successfully run a remote firm. And I'm going to let Shahram take over. Please introduce yourself with any more that you need to. But I'd like to dive right into the meat because you said that this one was really packed.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I have a firm, like a big firm necessarily, but I do have 2 subcontractors, and then I'm working with my sister as well on some not bookkeeping stuff, but just business stuff. And so this is like really hitting home for me because I feel like kind of a little bit of a mess. I got some Slack, I got some Notion, I got
Yeah.
some Google Drive, and I don't do any of it well. So please teach us.
No, I'm really excited to talk about this topic too, because whether you're a small firm or a big firm, if you're remote, you face a lot of the same challenges, and especially with what's happened in the last few years, right? Like during
Yeah.
COVID, all these firms were forced to go remote because they couldn't leave their apartments or their houses. So I think, there's a lot of firms right now that are still remote, right? But maybe they feel like there's things that they could do better because it was just kind of like thrown on them in the moment. But
Yeah.
also firms that want to go remote because they do see a lot of benefits, which we'll talk about. And a little bit about me. So I'm the CEO founder of Financial Sense. We work with accounting firms. We give them a workflow management tool built specifically for firms that help them collaborate with their team and get work done, which is really an essential part of being a remote firm. So that's why we have a lot of experience. I think 80% of our users are remote firms.
Okay.
So we get to talk to them. We learn best practices, and I thought I would share some of these insights in this webinar today. So I'm really excited to jump into this topic. There's a lot to talk about. I could talk about this for hours. I try to distill it down as much as I could, but it's going to be
Perfect. Yeah, y'all chime in the comments below in the YouTube stream, because I'll get our question. I'll field questions while he's going through the presentation and work them in. And go ahead and let us know where you're from, so we can get some conversation going while we bring in the slides here. I'm going to add to the stream here, Shahram.
perfect.
Going to take our little picture away, and we look good. So teach us how to successfully run a remote accounting firm, and throw in some how to fix a halfway broken remote accounting firm that has a couple of systems that need to, because we cobbled together, right? So
Yeah,
rather than being strategic about picking it. So, all right, let's dive in.
definitely. So let's just get straight into the topic. So what are we going to talk about today, right? First, let's talk about like what a successful firm looks like, what you can achieve by being a well-run, successful firm. The challenges that prevent you from doing it, and then we'll get into the meat, right? We'll get into how do you overcome these challenges with documentation, how you do it with creating like a strong internal tech stack that fosters collaboration and visibility. And then once you have that internal tech stack, right, what best practices do you put around team management to really foster that even more and build upon that? Same thing on the external side, right? Your client facing tech stack, creating a modern tech stack that is easy to use for your clients, and then some client best practice management tips to really help you create a better client experience. And then we're going to be giving away, like we do in every single one of our webinars, some free materials, stuff that you can take home to implement some of the things you learned today in this webinar. So
Perfect. Those are linked below, y'all.
yeah, definitely. So they're linked below, and I'm sure we'll share them in the Facebook group too for the
Yep.
people that miss the webinar. So let's jump into like, what does a successful remote firm actually look like, right? Well, when you're running a high performing remote firm, one of the best parts about it is that it's a lot easier to find talent and onboard new employees. So a big thing firms are struggling with right now is finding talent. And if you're a local accounting firm and you're limited to your geographical region, that talent pool is limited.
Yeah.
It's a lot smaller, right? And it makes it hard to find good qualified talent. You can find talent, but good talent. But when you're remote, you can hire people from anywhere. We're a remote company, Financial Sense, and we have employees in Canada, we have employees in Europe, we have employees in the U.S.,
Wow.
in California, Georgia, Tennessee. But it's great because even though everyone's isolated, we're still a strong team. But we've been able to find the best talent a lot easier because of that. And onboarding them has been easy because we have the processes in place. Another big benefit, like when you have a successful firm, is you have good employee retention. If you run a remote firm right, it gives your employees flexibility. Most people looking for jobs or currently working at companies, they want to be able to work remotely. They want to have those flexible schedules. So if you do it right, your employees will be happy and it'll improve retention. And despite being isolated, right, everyone in different areas, your firm will be organized. People can access the information they need quickly. You'll have visibility. You'll be able to see where everything stands, who's working on what, and know what's going on in the firm, despite not being in that office and or like taking in that information through osmosis, right? Just being around. Um, and your clients will be happy, right? If you do it right, even despite being remote and maybe not always meeting with your clients in person, which you still can do as a remote firm, you create a seamless and modern experience that your clients enjoy, and you make it easy for them to work with you, right? Which is essential because if it's not easy to work with you, they're going to go somewhere else. And at the end of the day, remote firms are a lot more profitable because not just because you don't have to pay for an office and all the stuff that comes with it, but also because your employees are happier, you're retaining them more, you're not having that turnover, which is very expensive, and you're retaining your clients, which amplifies growth and makes everything just more profitable as a firm. So do it right. These are a lot of the benefits that you can have from being a remote firm.
So should we ask those people listening and the people listening in the future if they would consider themselves successful remote firm? Do you have these
Yeah.
things? Are you organized? Do you have visibility to find the stuff that you need? Are your clients happy? I mean, I know that I would have a lot of work to do in all these categories. So I
And yeah, and it's like you were saying, and the reasons for that is because it's really hard, like visibility, right? When you're in the office, you can see everything that's happening. You
mm-hmm.
can tap someone on the shoulder, which I would argue is very ineffective or it's a distraction and kills productivity, but you can easily get an update on something. But when someone's in Tennessee and someone's in Georgia and someone's in California, it's really hard to know what are they working on? Did they get that done? Right? Did they
Yeah.
complete all their tasks and hit that deadline at the end of the day? Did they follow up with that client? It's hard to see that. And that causes a lot of problems. And it makes it very hard to really run a firm successfully. Same thing with the disorganization, right? Since everyone's in different locations, all these files, these notes, whether it's meeting notes, emails, they're all being stored in different places. People are notorious if you don't have one centralized location, like this is where everything's happening. Documents get stored in different folders. Important emails are locked in people's inboxes, or you do have them, but you have to spend 15, 20 minutes just trying to find it because
Yeah.
someone forwarded it you 2 weeks ago. So it's very hard to stay organized when you don't have like a filing cabinet in the office or a place in the office to put
Yeah.
it. And then unity, right? So I felt this being a remote company, like it's easy to feel isolated. You're not getting those work socials as often. You're not going in the office and seeing people every day. And on your mental health, it can be tolling. You saw this with COVID. A lot of people struggled being locked in their apartments for so long. So it's hard to maintain that team unity. It's hard to keep people happy and feel like they're part of something bigger, a mission, a vision. So creating that cohesive team can be difficult because you don't see everyone as often as you would in the office.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, and then clients find it difficult when you're remote. You're going to have to collect information remotely. You're going to have to get documents signed remotely. They're going to have to be able to access things remotely. If that's hard to use, if it's difficult for them to work with you because you're not using a modern or easy to use technology, they're not going to be happy and they might go somewhere else. Um, So how do you overcome these challenges, right? So the three things which we hinted at earlier, right, in the agenda is the first thing you need to do is document your processes. When you have everyone remote, it's easy for everyone to create their own ways of doing things because they're not in there to watch you do the work. So you need to really streamline your processes because not only will it help people understand how to do work, but it's going to make, like we talked about, training people remotely a lot easier because they'll have all
Mhm.
the guides to follow. They will have all the information that they need to really figure out how to do the things they need to do across the firm. It'll prevent them from creating their own ways. The second part, once you've documented everything, is you need to create a virtual and collaborative workspace. So that whole office experience, take it virtual, create an online office in a way. And you do this through technology and best practices for managing your team. So creating that tech stack that allows your team to collaborate in one place, to see what they need to do, to communicate about the work in like as in a virtual office, and then having those best practices of managing your team and creating more team unity and camaraderie and further pushing that collaboration. And the same thing on the client side, right? What is that external tech stack, the client facing tech stack that drives a seamless experience, as well as tips around how do you manage your clients, set expectations, and really just keep them happy and retain them. So go ahead.
I think this is interesting to think about the internal and the external tech stack. I've never heard it like chunked in that way. It's just like, what's your tech stack?
Mhm.
That's how I've always thought about it. And maybe there's overlap, but maybe there's not. And that might be a bigger way to like eat the elephant, right? Like if when it sounds like, what is my tech stack? That sounds so big, but maybe to start to break down how
Yeah.
you think about it, whether it's internal or external. Do I need it to do both? If I don't, like, do I not need it to do both? And then that might help you eliminate 20 solutions, right? Like, because you have 20, 21 things doing all that what you need, and you're like, oh, but all those client communicate, and I don't need, that's not what we need this for. So those are out. So I think that's just, even just that, like two buckets, internal and client facing, is a great way to divide it up.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a firm believer in, I think you'll see there will be some overlap in certain parts where it is necessary to have the external and the internal connected for organization reasons. But I do believe, there are some solutions out there where you can get a one size fits all or an all-in-one platform, which those can be nice, right? It's a little easier because you don't have all these other subscriptions. But the problem with that is they're not going to be good at everything, right? They're going to be okay at everything versus if you do best of breeds approach where you have a few solutions on the front end internally and a few solutions externally, they're all going to do really well at that one function. And that's how you're going to create a more collaborative and more importantly, a seamless client experience because they're going to be they're focused on being the best at that versus I'm going to try to do everything okay with a one size fits all solution or a all in one shop. The e-signatures aren't going to work that well. The portal is going to be complex and confusing. It's going to be buggy, and the clients aren't going to like it, or your team's not going to like it. And adoption is the most important part of everything. If you can't
Yeah.
get your team and your clients to use the system because it's clunky, you're not going to have it. Everything becomes obsolete at the end of the day. And we'll talk about that, but ease of use and modern tech stack is key. And we'll talk about that some more.
Yeah, let's move forward. Hey, y'all, Beth Sullivan has just chimed in. Like, I asked her what some of her main tools were for improvement, and she gave a tip about Google Drive with having a master template of client folders. So then
Yeah.
she makes a copy of the folder whenever a new client comes on board, and she says that's made a big, huge difference. So I would love for y'all to just like share the answers to your questions while Shahram is going through. Share the answer to what are your main tools. And we might see some little gems like that for like Beth just shared. So, all right, process documentation.
Yeah, actually just a little sneak peek. Google Drive is a part of the client-facing tech stack. So
Okay. She
that's
says it
pretty
makes
cool.
it really easy to find. The clients love that she can find their documents even when she's in their office.
Yeah,
So she's doing up I guess some on-site work too, and so yeah.
I've actually got a little tip. I think she's going to be interested in hearing of how we think about it a little bit differently with the Google Drive.
All right,
Um,
Beth, stick around.
So process documentation. Let's run through this one quick. So documenting your processes, right? We talked about why this is important. you need to document your processes when you're remote, because your new hires can't sit next to you in the office and watch you do the work and learn the work. So you need to documenting your processes throughout your firm gives them that guide to follow as if they were in the office. It helps train them a lot easier and onboard them. But it also results in more consistent deliverables. Like we talked about, if I'm 100 miles away from someone else, I can't ask them technically how to do work. I might create my own ways to do things. And then when I train someone, or if that other person trains someone, they might teach them those bad habits. And it can result in inconsistent deliverables and unhappy clients, mistakes being made. And then lastly, it makes your team more resilient. When your team has a process to follow, a guide that anyone can pick up to do the work, if someone is sick, anyone can pick up right where he left off. They'll see what part of the process he was in, but they also know exactly how to get everything done. That person that's sick doesn't have to leave notes of how to do the work, what to do next, where he was. It just lets your team operate more smoothly, even if there's things that happen, like someone's on vacation or someone goes sick. So it makes your firm more resilient. So how do you do this, right? The first thing we recommend is to keep it simple. So this is like a simple checklist, right? It's just 10 steps of how to do a monthly bookkeeping process. A lot of firms, they never document their processes because they think it's such a huge task. It's going to take them weeks, and firms don't have that time. So that's why we say start simple, right? And what we tell people to do is set a timer for 5 minutes. And then within that 5 minutes, the goal is just to brain dump that information, that process of how you do work, onto a piece of paper or into an Excel file. Once you've done that, don't overthink it. Don't think about spelling. Don't think about putting everything in the right order and it being perfect. Just get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. After the 5 minutes is up, take a second look. Just see if you need to fix a few spelling errors, make sure everything's in the right order, you didn't miss anything. Boom, you've created a checklist for a process in your firm. And the huge thing is if you can do one checklist in 5 minutes, then you can create a documented checklist for every process in your firm within an hour. So within 1 hour of your day, you can document every single process in your firm from a very simple level, which, yes, they can be more detailed, which we'll talk about. But I think at first, the goal is to lay that foundation first. Don't overthink it. And then even with a simple checklist like this, your team can get a lot of value out of it. You could get a lot of value out of it, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. But then you have that momentum, that foundation, your team has a better processes to follow. And then as you get time, you can take it to the next level, which is creating video walkthroughs. So for some of these more detailed steps, like maybe like reviewing AR or categorizing uncategorized transactions or reconciling accounts, make a walkthrough video, right? That shows exactly how you do it. And it won't take you much time because you can just record yourself as you do the work yourself and then paste that video to the task. So now your team has the process to follow and a detailed SOP video documenting exactly how you do that work. So they have everything they need to get the work done and know exactly how to get it done as if you were doing it yourself. This isn't in the tech stack, but we recommend Loom. It's free. It's an awesome, easy to use video platform. Anyone can learn how to use it in under 2 minutes. It's super simple.
So it's I keep chuckling internally thinking, oh, he keeps talking about your team can follow this, and I'm like, I'm like my own new employee every time I onboard a client, right? Because I'm not doing it that much, and so it's not a muscle that I have. So we need these checklists for ourselves. Because we're not going to remember, at least the volume that I do. I'm reinventing my process every time because I haven't taken the time, because I'm not big enough to have a process or whatever, and it's just not true. So I'm all about people who want to stay small and the benefits of staying small. So we are our new employee. If we bring on 4 or 5 clients a year, you won't remember if that's the frequency with which you're doing it. So,
and that's so true. And the thing is, like you're talking about, your processes are still evolving because you're still improving the processes. When you document it, you can make improvements over time. And when you come back, a month later to do that work, you'll remember, oh, I changed the way I did this. This was the more efficient way. It makes your processes smarter over time without having to try to remember or even forget, that efficient way you found to do the work instead.
Yeah. All right.
So the last thing is, when documenting your processes, now that you've outlined your process, right? The process to follow and how to complete each step in the process, you need to equip your team with the information they need to actually complete those processes, right? How to complete each individual step. This includes links to the document management systems, where to actually upload files, right? Our what is, if you got to reach out to the client, what is the client's email and contact information? If you need to reconcile something, what is the app you have to access to do that? What is the login information for that app? What are the security questions? All this information that your team will need access to actually complete the steps you outlined. So adding that information in, and once you do this, that's it. It's pretty simple, and your team will have everything they need to get the work done without having to involve you in the process. You'll be able to onboard people a lot faster, and your firm will be much more resilient for if you need to step away from the office and someone needs to take on your workload, or vice versa.
And he moved through the checklist part fast, y'all, but we did a full blown, our first interview was Scale Your Firm with Optimized Checklist,
Yep.
and that's in the playlist. And I know there were some people going gaga about the download that you had, which with the it was in the Dropbox folder that you shared. That was a Google sheet, I think, of
Yeah.
like basic bookkeeping checklist, and people were like, "Oh, this is what I've needed." So make sure to go back and watch that that more thorough how to start getting going with checklist, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. We go into deeper detail there, and it's really insightful. Yeah. So just some tips when you're documenting your best practices, like we talked about, keep it simple at first. And I think, we talked about brain dumping the information, the process on a paper or a checklist, but if you're remote, you need to get away from that. After, it's great to start because it's simple, but find a way to digitalize those checklists and something that can remain stagnant or be a single source of truth. So you could create a Google Excel doc, or Google Sheets document and put them all in there. But the thing is, your team can easily accidentally delete things. They can make their changes. They can make a copy and have their own version that they maybe change. And you need a place where it's a single source of truth. And that's, we're going to talk about a workflow solution here soon in your internal tech stack that can help you do that. So your team need to be able to access those documents, but you also need to protect the integrity of those checklists through an actual workflow system. And then, like you kind of like we were talking about earlier, as your company grows, as you learn more, so even if it's just you, as you learn more, your processes will evolve. So always make sure to go back and revisit your processes. Am I doing this the best way possible? Or if you're growing and your business becomes more complex, is the process a little bit different now? You want to keep updating those, whether it's every year, every 6 months. It's different for every firm and depending on how fast you're growing. So now we've talked about documenting your processes. Let's talk about creating a virtual and collaborative workspace. So how do you do this, right? How do you create this virtual workspace that's kind of like your old office, but virtual, and you get those same benefits? Well, first you start with the tech stack, right? A tech stack that can create organization, collaboration, and give your team visibility. And then once you have the tech stack, implement some best practices around that to create more communication with your team, to keep your team aligned and have that unity, that camaraderie, make it feel like, they're not isolated. So putting these two together, it's not just about having best practices. It's not just about having that tech stack, but having both of those together to create that virtual and collaborative workspace. You can't just implement a solution and hope that solves the problem. So what does your internal tech stack look like? So there's a few categories I think are essential, right? You need a work management tool, a place to manage the work, delegate that work, track the status of work, because you're not in the office. You can't just lean over and tell someone to do something and ask them the status of it. You need the collaboration, a place to organize all that work-related information in one place so it's not in all these different channels, text message, Slack, Teams, email. And then you need a client database, one single source of truth for your team to go to access all your client information. Again, so it's not in all these different places like an Excel file, a Word document, a sticky note somewhere. And then you need, in terms of team, right? You need some team communication that's not related to work, a place like for your team to hang out and get to know each other. And you need a video conferencing solution for team meetings and socials. So we'll talk through those a little bit.
So the team communication is not where work gets done in your example. The Slack is for the get to know each other.
So the way I look at it is work collaboration is collaborating and sharing information on work, right? You want that isolated because you don't want that mixed in with all the other types of communication.
Okay.
Slack or like Teams for team communication, that's more focused on non-work related conversations. So it still could be related to work or internal firm issues or discussions, but it's not necessarily tied to work for a client.
Okay.
But also like creating that virtual water cooler for people to hang out and get to know each other, right?
Was that what you meant when you said the best practices for? It was like on the slide before. There was like the best
Um,
practices for communication. So you're going to say, like, if someone asks a question about a client in Slack, someone has to be the person to say, "Hey, drop that in the workflow management tool
yeah,
for
because
that."
what's going to happen is if it's happening in Slack, that question about the client or that important update, when someone needs to go back and see that update, they're going to have to search through where was that in Slack, what channel was that in.
Yeah. Okay.
It creates
But
that
so you
problem.
got to you got to teach them, right? Because they won't
Yeah,
know that. Like maybe you do use Slack for something that it was. So that's the best practices for communication, and you have to identify that and like coach people on that.
yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
So the first solution, the work management, right? So as we talked about, when you're remote, everyone's in different locations. So as an owner, it's very difficult to know what is the status of work, right? Who's working on what? Is everything getting done at the end of the day? Because you can't see it, you can't easily get that update. You may have to text someone, email someone, or maybe they did let you know. They shot you an email letting you know they finished it, but you missed it because you get 100 emails a day, or you spend 10 minutes trying to find it. You lose that visibility. And then as a staff member too, they don't have the visibility necessarily to know what is highest priority for them. What do they need to do today, tomorrow, or next week? And it can be very easy for them to overlook important things that have important deadlines when they don't have that clear to-do list. So you solve this problem with a work management tool because it gives your team one place to go and see everything that is assigned to them so they know exactly what they need to do and when they have that priority to-do list. But also as an owner, it lets you see all of that in real time. When they're working, what's the status of the work? Did they get it done on time? Who's actually working on it? So by putting it all in one place, it gives everyone visibility into what they need to do and where everything stands. And that increases the visibility and it enables your team to actually get their work done on time and hit your deadlines.
Okay.
So just to give you like an example, like we recommend Financial Sense. This is our solution. This is why we built it to help firms get work done, especially remote firms. So like this is like the dashboard, right? This is where as an owner, you can see everything everyone's working on. What is the status of the work? When it needs to be completed? Uh, and you can run custom reports to say if a client calls, you can see filter by the client's name to see exactly all the work for the client, what status it's in. You can see work by team member. You can see everything that's in review and assigned to me. So you can run all these reporting to get very granular visibility. That's the key here, right? And then as a team member, they have this same view, but it's just for them. It's their personalized to-do list. So now they know exactly what they need to do, by when, and how to get it done.
This is a little bit crazy, but I'm thinking like if I was um, a solo doing this with plans to grow,
Yeah.
almost creating like two people in Financial Sense, like CEO Day or CEO Kate and Bookkeeper Kate. And maybe on, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm doing more like my CEO tasks, but I still got to do bookkeeping work, right? Like I'm still actually the one clicking in the bookkeeping software.
Yeah.
And so then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays is when I know, more in the transaction to transaction grind, and I see that person's tasks. I don't know, as a way to possibly separate. And then when you do hire for that role, it's almost like you have that persona of this is what I want you to take over. You're
Yeah.
this, you do these activities. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming, but I'm thinking about how it would apply to me. And that would be nice to know, like, is this bookkeeper Kate, or is this like, what I'm website builder, and I am a marketer, and I'm trying to learn how to run a Facebook ad, and I'm doing all this like growth stuff too.
Yeah,
That can get lost.
there's a lot of different types of work, and that's the thing with these tools too, is you can segment the work, right? You can have like the recurring bookkeeping work, you can have the one-off tax work or the one-off projects. So you can segment that and really like get that clarity, right? It's not just
Yeah.
a tangled mess in your mind, Um, so let's go to the next solution, work collaboration. So this is what we're talking about. This isn't like just regular communicating with your team. This is collaborating on the work. So everything work related. So there's a lot of things that go into getting work done. Remember, we created the checklist, the SOPs of how to do the work, emails from clients related to the work with important information and updates, files that you need to get the work done, updates from your team and just internal communication. So you need all that stored in one place, right? Because when you're remote, it's coming in via email from your clients, important updates. The SOPs are on maybe some Google Sheet somewhere. Important files are in a document management system somewhere. These updates are in Slack, like we were talking about. It's in 6 different channels, and no one knows exactly where to go to find these things. And they spend 20 minutes just trying to find that information. This kills productivity. This causes mistakes and has things overlooked. So having a work collaboration tool that is tied into your work management tool is essential because it keeps everything in one place. You want to store everything related to the work, emails, checklists, files, team updates on the work. So it can be accessed in seconds instead of searching through your inbox and Slack and folders in a document management system somewhere.
Yeah.
And this gives you that organization at scale. No, but if it's just you, it's great because it's organized as well, even as a solo. But if you have 10, 20 people, you grow to that size, everything will still stay organized because not only do you have it now, but if you need to reference work that happened 6 months ago because something went wrong, you have everything in one place instead of trying to find all that 6 months later, which is a huge pain point for a lot of
Yes.
firms. And again, financial sense. So that's built into our work management tool. When you click on, like, let's say this monthly bookkeeping project here for Adeline Collins, you can see here inside of it, this is like your list. So your list is your checklist that we talked about, creating, documenting your processes, client communication and documents they've sent you. You can see team updates here. So this is the team collaboration, access files, and client emails. You can even, if a client emails you something about their monthly bookkeeping work, you can pin it to the work. So when your team's working, they can see those emails instead of you just forwarding it to them and it getting buried in their inbox.
Wow.
So everything in one place. That's a common theme we're going to hear throughout this webinar. Organization, because it's hard when you're remote. It really is. And then a client database, right? So this is the third part of the tech stack. You have your work-related information, right? Everything related to the work, but you also need all your client information stored in one place, like a Rolodex of all your clients and their contact information and their notes, passwords, entity info. Typically, when we talk to firms, a lot of this stuff is stored in Excel documents. Some of it's stored in unstructured Word documents. It's in emails somewhere, and in all in like these other apps. And there's no one centralized place for your team to go to access this information quickly. So again, by keeping it in one place securely, so your team can access it, it helps them get more work done. So from the work, if you click the client's name, you can access the client's profile. Everything related to the client is in one place. Upcoming work, documents, requests, notes from meetings, contact information, entity info, passwords, and usernames. It's all one click away. So your team has everything they need about the client to get the work done. If they need to reach out, grab the contact info. If they need the entity type, they can grab it here. They need to see what happened in that meeting 2 months ago, it's right here. Everything they need in one place.
When you don't have a database with like the fields that you have decided you need, you don't collect the same thing from every client. Like I have, okay, so your client's going to start payroll now, and I'm going to open payroll accounts for them. And I'm like, I think I got their EIN a long time ago, but like we've kind of had a relationship for a while, and I started off as just like a cleanup, so I didn't really know that it was going to be a long relationship. And then I'm like, I don't even know if I've asked the information, because a database shows you this is missing, this is missing, this is missing,
Yeah.
versus in some sort of email that I may or may not have asked, are you an LLC or are you an S corp? And at least now I know maybe I haven't asked that.
Yeah,
So
definitely. It definitely keeps everything more organized. It helps you stay on top of the information, and sets your team up for success.
yeah.
So let's get away from like the work related part of the tech stack, right? Let's talk about the team building, the unity to create that cohesive team. So you also need team communication. And like you talked about, Kay, there's a very good point. There's two different types of communication. There's the work collaboration, which is everything related to client work.
Okay.
We talked about organizing that in FC so it's easy to find and it's not getting lost in emails and Slack channels. But there's also the team communication side. This is a place for you to talk about non-client related work, things you need to do in the firm related topics and discussions, but also a place for your team to hang out and get to know each other. That virtual water cooler that everyone hangs around in the office, right? And talks about what happened last weekend. So it's a place for your team to get to know each other on a more personal level. And this is important because again, we have a fully remote firm. I have experienced this. It's easy to feel a little alone and isolated, like because you're not going in the office every day and you kind of lose some of that morale. But if you can create a very social virtual environment, it can create a very strong team. Um, so we recommend Slack. All of you know what Slack is, I would think. Or if you maybe use Teams, it's a great platform. You can create all these different channels. But here's the thing, having a team like virtual collaboration area, like communication, like Slack or Teams, is not always enough. You also need a place to have team meetings to really get to know each other. Um, and like on a more personal level, face to face, right? Not just messaging people because it's not as strong socially. So having a virtual conferencing platform, not just to have socials, right, to get to know each other, which I highly recommend as a virtual company. We do them and they're great. I actually have one right after this webinar with my team.
Yeah.
Um, but also like a place for more complex problems you're tackling in the firm around client issues or just firm related stuff. Um, Talking through it face to face can be easier to work through than just kind of chatting about it in FC or in Slack. So having a place where you can really go talk through deep topics around the office place or socially.
Okay.
And Zoom. Everyone loves Zoom. Very easy to use, very affordable. So again, this is your internal firm tech stack, right? Work management, collaboration, database, team communication, meetings. And we're going to send these. This will be part of the remote firm tech stack everyone will be receiving. So now that you have your tech stack, right, let's talk about best practices for managing your team remotely. The first thing I recommend is, and we see a lot of firms do really well, is setting clear expectations and goals with your team. When you're in the office, it's easier to say work 9 to 5. But when you're remote, it's harder to understand, are people performing well? So you need to have clear goals and expectations for your team and measurables and set those and make them clear, right, with them so you can measure them against them and see, are they performing and are they not performing? And the great thing about doing this is if you're focused more on the outcomes versus the time worked,
Okay.
and you're measuring that way, you can allow for flexible schedules. People want to work for companies that are remote because they can somewhat work on their own time. Yes, you have to be reasonable. You have to work within certain times to communicate with clients and team members. But if you wanted to take 3 hours off in the middle of the day to go walk around the city or go to an event, you can, as long as you're still getting your goals done and you're
Okay.
completing them on time. So if you're focused on outcomes, your team will appreciate because they'll feel like they have a clear guide of what do I need to do to be successful, but it'll also allow them to have that flexibility if needed to fit, not just their life around their work, but their work around their life as well, but still be successful in the office. Um, and I think another important thing is you're not in the office and it can be easy for people to lose the vision of the company, right? So having annual, quarterly, and weekly alignment meetings. There's a book, I don't know if you guys have heard it, it's called Traction. It's the entrepreneur operating system, the EOS model, very popular. not just for remote companies, but companies in general. And it just really is a process to follow to keep your team aligned, everyone rowing in the same direction, and build that momentum to build a successful company that continues to grow year over year. So having those annual strategy meetings. So from a high level, it's basically have an annual strategy meeting every year with your team to talk about what is the vision of the company? What do we want to achieve this year? Set those goals for that first quarter in that annual meeting of what you need to accomplish to hit that annual vision and goal. Then every quarter, revisit and say, okay, are we on track? If we are and are not, what do we need to do to get back on track? Every quarter, you set rocks or other goals. And then every week between the quarters, you're meeting to see, are we on track to hit our quarterly goal? And this keeps your team aligned throughout the entire year on we're all moving towards the same direction to accomplish the same goals and vision, and everyone is aligned. And it makes your firm more efficient. It makes everyone feel like, they know what they need to do.
So is that weekly meeting the only non-flexible work schedule that you see firms have? Like
Um,
everything else, you can go to your event and
yeah,
go to the
yeah,
dentist, but you got to be everyone, no matter where you are, has to come to the weekly meeting.
yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, the weekly meetings. So I look at the weekly meetings more as one-on-ones, typically with like the senior managers and the managing.
Okay.
It depends on the size of the company, but a smaller company, like, if you're 5 employees or less, yes, it would be everyone. Like kind of like you hear like weekly stand-up meetings.
Okay.
That's the same example there. But it just keeps one, it helps everyone feel like they're working together and they're collaborating, right? But also it just keeps them aligned. So you also get some of that camaraderie aspect as well.
Right.
Very powerful stuff. Check out Traction or the EOS model. Very popular system. Highly recommend. Also, one thing we do as a firm, as a remote company, is quarterly one-on-ones, and we see a lot of firms do this. And what this is about is meeting with each one of your employees one-on-one every quarter. And it's not a performance review for them. It's more of a performance review for you as a manager or an owner. So asking your team, one, how are you doing in the role? How do you feel about it? But then I ask 3 questions, right? What do I need to keep doing? So what am I doing right now that is helping you become successful in your role? What do I need to start doing? What am I not doing yet that I need to start doing to help you set you up for success and feel like you help put you on track? And then what do I need to stop doing? What am I doing as a manager and owner that you feel like maybe hindering you, or am I micromanaging? And having that transparency, that open line of communication, that vulnerable workspace to talk about those things and tackle those issues to set your employees up for success, and helps you as an owner know exactly what you need to do to be a great manager. And then lastly is the social aspect of things, right? Having monthly online socials. I think when we started a remote company, I was a little nervous about this. I thought it was a little cheesy. But we started to do them in our remote company, and I know a lot of firms that do them. They do it either biweekly or monthly. Online socials. Everyone hops on a Zoom, and there's a lot of really great platforms out there to help you with this. You don't have to do it all yourself and make everyone play Monopoly on Zoom, right? You can. There's a lot of really great platforms. We use something called Weave, WEVE, and
Okay.
it's got 50 to 100 games, and there's like virtual escape rooms, trivia. They even have their own hosts that come on and host it with your team and serve as like the person that like runs the games.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun. There's also a lot of other free options out there too. But there's a lot of cool systems where it can make it easy. You don't have to actually plan the social yourself. You don't have to take on that responsibility or bear that weight. There's a lot of great platforms out there for that, and our team loves them. It really helps everyone get to know each other better on a more personal level.
I'm always looking for the hack, and so I'm thinking everyone on the team takes a turn planning, maybe. So outsource it internally. If you got I don't know, 3 or 4 team members, you're only doing it once a quarter, planning something. So that could be a good way to get started, right? So
Yeah.
don't let the big the paid apps and the big fancy social companies stop you. Like, find a way, guys. Find a way to implement the best practices in the way that's best for you. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And then the last ones, I'm showing my team. I'm gonna run a little late.
for your team social. Okay, well we'll move.
I'm just letting them know real quick. But And then lastly, in-person company trips. Like people want to be able to meet face to face, even as a
Wow.
remote company. And I think a great way to do this, this is what we're doing. We're going to be at QBO Connect this year. If you guys are there, please come by our booth. We'd love to meet you and talk more about these awesome topics. But using conferences as an excuse
Yeah.
to get everyone together, it's a great opportunity. Or even just taking a vacation somewhere cool, like to some great destinations. Do it at least once a year, right? Let everyone, again, that camaraderie, feel like they're not just locked away in their apartment, and see the team is real.
There were lots of people who did that at the conference I went to, BKX, this summer for
Yeah.
bookkeepers. So they brought their whole team together. Some for the first time because they're up and coming firms.
This will be for the first time for us.
Way to go! Way to go!
So
all right. So should we move to the client? Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
give us the highlights of the client experience.
So we'll make this quicker. So let's talk about creating a seamless client experience, right? This is essential because your clients have to enjoy working with you. You have to make it easy. If you don't, they're going to go somewhere else. So just like the internal tech stack, the external stack is the same. You have your external tech stack, the technology to create a secure, modern, and easy to use experience, but also best practices for setting expectations, being responsive, and creating personalization. So this is what the external tech stack looks like. You have your form builder, e-signatures for signing documents, secure file sharing, client meetings, document storage, Google Drive. So to go through these quickly, like form builder, right? What would you use this for? You can use this for client intake, so tax organizer or other parts of your business, like getting information from clients in the beginning, but also getting feedback. So when you're remote, it can be hard to keep a pulse on how happy are your clients. Doing an annual or biannually survey with your clients is a great way to see where you can improve and improve your processes. And Google Forms is free. It's a very customizable, easy to use solution. There's a lot of form builders out there. Google Forms, I recommend just because it's affordable and it's free, but you can, the Cognito Forms, Typeform, there's a lot of good options out there. E-signature, right? No one likes getting a document, downloading it, printing it, signing it, scanning it, resending it, and
Please
especially
don't
your
do
clients don't. And like your engagement letter, you want to get that signed as fast as possible, right? And other documents, it slows everything down. So by implementing an e-signature platform, you can get these documents signed in a day rather than weeks, because your client, it's not going to have enough time. It's hard enough to get them to upload information into a portal,
Yeah.
let
Yep.
alone sign a document manually and re-upload it.
For sure. E-signature, PandaDoc. Okay.
PandaDoc, DocuSign, all great options. Secure file sharing, right? So there's two big problems with this. One is clients find portals really difficult to use sometimes. So what do? If they get a friction point there, they send it via email. When they send it via email, it's not secure because the portal was too complex. Also, if the portal's complex, just like e-signatures, your client's not going to send you the information on time. They're going to delay it because they're too busy. You know, they only have a few minutes to get it done. They can't figure it out. They're going to do something else and get distracted and forget about it. I see this a lot. So many firms I work with, the reason their work is overdue and not complete on time most of the time is because the client hasn't sent them the information. So creating an easy to use but secure way. So we like to do this with our system, creating a passwordless but secure portal makes it easy for your clients to upload documents, but also having reminders to keep them on top of it. So with Financial Sense, you can do this. You can securely, in an encrypted way, exchange, send, and receive documents. They get a notification via email. They do not have to create an account. They do not have to download an app. They just click the email and it takes them into their portal. We keep it secure because they get a verification code similar to 2FA that gets sent to them to verify their identity, but they don't have to remember a password or ask you for the password because they forgot it. So it makes it easy. So they don't send it via email, and it gets your documents faster because it takes them 2 clicks to upload all that information, and they get reminded if they don't, so they don't forget about it. So it gets your info faster in a secure way. Client meetings, just like team meetings, you need to be face-to-face sometimes. You can't always do it in person. So having a good video conferencing system like Zoom is a great way to do that. Lastly is document storage. I wanted to save a few minutes to talk about this. So, we talked about with Financial Sense, you can securely exchange documents, request documents, have those automated reminders. That's great. But it is still also good to have a portal for archiving old deliverables, old statements, old tax returns, engagement letters that the client may need access to. And you don't want to have, you typically don't want them to ask you for it, even if you have a portal, which happens a lot because it distracts the firm. You don't have time to go find a document and send it to them because you're already busy with work. So creating an easy to use place to store old documents, not exchange documents, but really just to store them for your client to access it. And that's how that differs from the two. So that's why we recommend Google Drive. Most people have a Gmail. Most people are familiar with Google Drive. But here's the thing. So I learned this the other day, and I thought this was an interesting tip. So not even like if you're using Google Drive or even not using Google Drive, any other system, don't create the client folder on your drive, on your document management system and store it all in there. Have the client create their folder on their Google Drive, and then they give you access to it. So that way you can have all the links to their document, their folder in your client database, so you can still easily access it. But the key there is what it does is your client's familiar with their document management system. They know where that folder is because they created it and it's living with all their other online folders. So now when they need to go access that document, they know exactly where to go because it's familiar with them, versus you creating it and they have to find this link. They don't know exactly how to access it. So it's just a small little thing about how you think about it, but having them create the folder and give you access. And that's the thing too. If you lose the client, you don't have to bundle all those documents and send it to them. They just cut off the access. They have all the documents already. So it's an easier offboarding process as well.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I've always created all of mine, and I haven't thought about the scenario where someone leaves and I want them to have the folder, but I would like to get rid of it, or I mean, I guess you really kind of like I guess sort of an electronic hoarder at some points, and probably most bookkeepers are, like, we want to keep our records, right? Just I don't know. Yeah, and that's interesting. If they cut you off from stuff that you've shared, do we risk not having our archive?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if they cut you off, cut the access off, you wouldn't have access to anymore. But I think you would still share like the important work related stuff. You'd still have that in your client database, right? You'd still have that on the work. But in terms of like some of the documents that aren't as important or some of the deliverables, right? You can always still go access those, but having them have access to that, and they may not use Google Drive. They may not use. They may use Dropbox or Box, right? Or some other portal. The key is like about it is though, if they create it on their own DMS system, they're familiar with it. They don't have to learn yours or how to access it. It makes it easier. So
yeah,
that's what we see. It was a great tip. So this is your internal tech stack, right? Our external, the client facing, to create a modern, seamless experience, make it easy for your clients to work with you. I think that's key, whether you're internal, whether you're a remote or non-remote firm, to be honest. So some client management best practices: set clear expectations, right? I think you need to do this from day one. And it's not just creating an engagement letter, but really spelling out, like what is a part of your role and what is not a part of your role, right? So even saying what we are not responsible for, what we do not do, but what we do, both of those, because otherwise they'll still assume. Talking about what is the responsive time, or you can get back to them in 24 hours, 48 hours, a week. How responsive will you be? Talk through that. And the channels, this is a big one. What channels can they communicate with you? Are they able to text you? Can they call you? Is it just email? Really being clear on what the expectations are going to be working with you, so you set a good relationship at the beginning and there's no miscommunication. And doing this in the engagement letter, but not just having them sign it, but talking through it with them and walking through it with them is the best way. meeting those expectations. So the key to having a happy client is not going above and beyond expectations. It's really just meeting the expectations you set. So only set expectations that you truly believe that you can hit. I mean, if you don't think you can respond within 24 hours, say 48 hours. It's not going to be a big difference as long as you've set that standard with them and you hit them.
Yep.
And then I think this is a really cool tip I got from another firm we were talking to was even if you have a 24-hour, 48 or week-long response time, when they send you a message or a question, acknowledge it. Say, hey, I've seen this. We're going to get to this and I'll get back to you in 48 hours. Something simple like that goes a long way. It makes your clients feel more valued. It gives them comfort in knowing you've seen it and are going to get back to them. I've known firms that have won a lot of new clients this way. The firm wasn't doing it before. They didn't have the visibility, so they left, and they love it, and they stick around with that firm because of it. And then show them you care. I have some personalization, send them a happy birthday, right? Congratulate them with the company accomplishes something big. A cool tip is, for birthdays, when you onboard the client, get their birthday and just schedule an email, happy birthday email to go out, 4 months out on their birthday, right? You don't have to make a note on your task. Just go ahead and schedule it when you onboard them and set it up every year. And that way you don't even have to do it. It's on autopilot, but it shows them that you care and, they'll appreciate that. So those are the best practices. And essentially, just to recap everything, to build a successful remote firm, you need to document your processes, right? Streamline everything so you can onboard, train, and maintain work quality remotely. Create a virtual collaborative workspace with a good tech stack, but also best practices around that tech stack to create more unity and collaboration. And then make it easy for your clients to work with you with a seamless client experience, with a modern tech stack, something that's easy to use, not these outdated solutions. And then some client management tips for setting expectations and showing them you care. And then just in terms of the giveaway, to talk about the links, is a process documentation playbook. So the steps we talk about creating your checklist, just has tips, practices you can follow. It gives you some examples. So great place to go if you want to document your processes. And then the essential remote firm tech stack. So the internal and external tech stack we recommended, some extra feature information about them that you can read about.
Okay. That's wonderful. Hey, you've got your social, and we have just packed a lot of information. There's no questions waiting. So I want us to wrap up, guys. Make sure to check out the links, check out the entire playlist of our interview. Mark your calendars for October 13th, where we're going to learn about how to build a high-performing firm. And I have specifically asked Shahram to tailor that message to how to build a high-performing firm, even if we want to be small. There's different ways to think about what a high-performing firm is. And so come back for that on October 13th. Y'all, probably the best way to get in touch with Shahram is in our Facebook group, but the Bookkeeping Side Hustle group, but you can always reach out to him directly through Financial Sense. And I think that's kind of all. Why don't we just wrap it up quick?
Yeah, that was great.
All right. Everyone, thank you for sticking around. Beth, thank you for being here, for what you've added. Those of you watching after the fact, chime in on the chat, leave your tech stack, leave your comments. I mean, there's a lot of other solutions that Shahram than what Shahram has shared. So that we're all learning together. So let's be collaborative like we always are, and we'll see y'all in we'll see Shahram back here on October 13th. Bye, y'all.
Looking forward. Take care.